Okay guys, so we decided to make this video. As you know, we just got back from our trip to Japan, and we get asked a lot how we did it, what people need to see, and I don't think we're experts at all, but we got asked enough that we decided we better chip in. So we have some other videos that are definitely more showing what we did. This is mostly just for tips and just kind of our take on things. Definitely check it out if you're interested in going, and hopefully we answer the questions so we don't have to keep answering them in person. But I think that a couple of these were really helpful. A lot of them we acquired from my parents or other friends, and they were great. So we're really excited to share that with everybody.
I just think it's a country that's so focused on culture, and there's a lot of big cultural good things to do and bad things to do that I think it's important. There's some things that I'm really glad that I knew that Randy told me before I went, because I would have been really embarrassed if I'd done some of the things when I got there. So we have a little bit of those too. And the first thing that we'll say is that we went to Japan on the cheap. So we decided to go the cheapest route possible. We stayed with family for part of it so that we could afford to go and have a good time. We booked our really inexpensive flights through Kayak, and we decided to use our Sky Miles points to go from here to LA, and then book flights from LA to Japan, because it's way cheaper to fly from LA than it is from Utah. So that's my first tip. We traveled on an inexpensive airline, and it gets you from point A to point B, but it's not something we would probably do again.
So I guess the bottom line is, if you can afford to go to Japan, you should go. I would never discourage, but it almost ruined our trip how bad this airline was.
Yeah, so we saved a couple $100, and I wish we would have
I literally would have spent at least $300 more each way to avoid what we... it was horrible. I've never had such a bad flying experience. And people always say, you're flying, be grateful. It was we were treated like garbage, and it was awful. We lost a lot of money. I wouldn't recommend it. So if you can afford to go, go, but
and definitely
keep that in mind. Yeah,
and definitely research the airline beforehand, because a lot of them will be airlines you haven't heard before. So research the airline, know what you're getting into. We kind of knew what we were getting into, but I didn't research as much because I didn't really want to know. I just wanted to save the money. So make sure you research.
So if you're going to see the country of Japan, there's a ton to see, and I think a lot of people think it's a small country, so you just go and you see everything and it's good. But there's a lot of places to see, and there's a lot of distance between those places. It's not just you land there and you just see it all. It's not like a theme park. So what we did is we lived in carry-on suitcases, which in a way is awful, because it's hard to gauge how much room we have left to buy souvenirs and stuff, and to say okay, we still want to do these things and buy these things for family and stuff. So it definitely would be nice if we had a bigger suitcase, but because we're in carry-ons, we could go all over the place, and I feel like that's the only way you can really do it, unless you've got
a long time in one spot,
or even money to blow. It's a lot. Traveling with a lot of suitcases is really hard if you're not going to be paying for taxis and stuff. We only took one taxi our entire time there, and that was because it was pouring rain. So I would highly recommend getting a really nice carry-on suitcase. Yeah. Our suitcases were Samsonite,
and they have the roller wheels, which is really important in Japan, because there's bumps on the road for blind people.
Yeah, there's a blind people sidewalk
everywhere.
You just need durable wheels so that they don't get beat up while you're there. Make sure you have good wheels if you're going to do that.
And the carry-ons are just great, because we only stayed in each hotel for one night, because we were just going all over the country, and so it was really great to just be able to. I could cart mine easily, Randy could cart his easily. We had backpacks. Each of us had a backpack, and then our carry-ons, and we were there for 12 days, and we were fine.
So the next must. A lot of people I've talked to don't listen to me when I talk about this, and I don't understand it. There is this thing for people that don't live in Japan only. It's called the JR Pass, and essentially what it is, so the country of Japan has a train system that's owned by a company, JR, and on the main island, as in like Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, everywhere on Honshu, everything is done by JR. And if you're not a citizen of Japan, you can buy these passes. They're what, $200?
$200,
for
yeah,
a person.
for 7 days.
For 7 days. But that literally means that when you have that pass, you don't pay for any trains at all. So there's the train called the Shinkansen. It's a bullet train. It can be as expensive as a plane sometimes. They're really quick. They're really comfortable trains. We literally walked into the train station and said, "Hey, we have a JR pass and we want to go from point A to point B," and they gave us the tickets. I don't understand. Like, if you're planning on going anywhere outside of Tokyo or outside of Kyoto, I would highly recommend it because those trains add up. Not to mention, if you're playing in Tokyo, Tokyo is the biggest city in the world, and there's so much to see. And there were so many times when we were just jumping from train to train, and those train tickets can be like $3, $4, $5. Sometimes they're like $10. We didn't pay for any of them because you just walk by and you show that pass. So that $200 was way well worth it. We went through that money in the first 3 or 4 days. So really look into that.
So the JR Pass goes hand in hand with our favorite, probably one of our favorite travel destinations in Japan, which is Kyoto. So we landed in Tokyo, and then we took the bullet train or the Shinkansen to Kyoto, which is amazing. It's so cool, and some of our favorite things to do in Kyoto are see the Inari Shrine. We actually stayed in the city where the Inari Shrine is, and I loved it. It's like this darling little village, and it was my favorite place that we stayed. I loved it. And then it's just another JR Pass train stop away from this beautiful golden temple called Kinkakuji, which is another thing that I feel like you have to see. Inari and Kinkakuji are must-sees if you go to Kyoto.
So while we were staying in Kyoto, we also made the decision we wanted to go to NARA, which is pretty close. And that's one that people don't hear about a lot. It's one that we also told a bunch of friends about, and I guess they didn't believe us. NARA has this beautiful temple called Todaiji, and it's unreal. It's a completely wooden temple, and it's a must-see. But the biggest reason that Maddy and I loved NARA is the city is filled with deer. There's actually ancient legend, whatever, that the deer were messengers from the spirit world. They're sacred. They're imperial deer, and I think it's still punishable by death if you kill one or something like that. They're pretty serious. And the coolest thing about it is the deer are brilliant. They use the crosswalks, they bow to you, and you can just feed them, you can touch them, they're everywhere, and it's literally like stepping into a cartoon. You'll
so
never experience
cool.
anything.
We bought so many. There's little stands that sell the crackers, cookie things that you can feed to the deer, and it's healthy for them and good for them. And we bought so many of those, and we just
they were $1.50 in American terms, and we spent $30.
Yeah. And just spent the day going through the beautiful Todaiji temple, and there's a bunch of shrines there too that we went through and saw. We saw a baby blessing thing while we were there, and saw so many shrines. But we just spent the whole day walking around and seeing the shrines and feeding deer.
The deer are just wandering. So
They're
you'll
everywhere.
go from Todaiji to go see a shrine, and they'll just walk up to you, and you'll just have those crackers. And
The deer will be just on the way, and it's a beautiful park. It's probably one of our favorite things that we did in Japan.
I'd never done that before. I've been to Japan many times and I'd never done that, and it might be my number one
It's
thing
so
I've ever
cool.
done there. It's so much
And
fun.
I've heard some people say oh, the deer were sleeping. There were some deer that were sleeping, but there are thousands of deer there.
Yeah.
We didn't.
There's almost as many deer as people.
We could have found one to feed anywhere there. So along with NARA, we've talked a lot about how we took trains different places, and I feel like it's really important to understand etiquette on the trains in Japan, because it's kind of a big deal, and I didn't realize how big of a deal it was. You are not supposed to eat food on the trains. It's pretty rude to eat food on the train.
Another thing on the train is you don't speak on your phone on the train.
You don't talk on the phone.
That wasn't very difficult for us. We didn't have anybody to call.
Right.
So I don't think you need to worry about that too much. But if you look around, you can usually kind of gather that, I mean, there's priority seats for pregnant, elderly
broken legs
people. Yeah. But I mean, because you'll be on the train so often, I think it's a good idea just to like know I'm not going to talk on the phone and I'm not planning on eating. The Shinkansen you can eat on. In fact, they have a car.
You can eat on the fast bullet train, but just on the regular trains like we like took from Kyoto to Nara or around Tokyo, we just would make sure that we weren't going to eat while we were on the train.
So in the main city of Tokyo, there's a lot of places you can go see, and you probably won't be too disappointed if you go anywhere in Tokyo. The number one place that you just have to see while you're there is Shibuya Station. And that is where the busiest crosswalk in the world is. And when people like imagine what Tokyo is like the busy, crazy,
bright lights,
that is like textbook what Tokyo is like. And you'll walk there and it's like you'll know like, okay, this is what I imagine Tokyo is like. And it's just super fun. There's like a million places to shop. There's great food, and if you do your research, you can learn a lot about the area. There's like a statue right at the station that you should probably look into. I just love Shibuya because it's like it is Tokyo. Like if I were to imagine Tokyo, that's instantly the first thing that comes to my mind.
It's so cool, and one of my favorite things that we did is we went towards the evening. So we got there before it was super dark, and then they turn all the lights on, and I've been to Times Square, and it was way more overwhelming than Times Square is because there's so many lights and all these little back streets with like tons of vendors and like I don't know. It was so cool. So I would definitely say go to Shibuya for sure, and if you can go at night, definitely go at night. That goes hand in hand with one of our tips that was really helpful while we were there is we got, before we went to Japan, on the Japan Rail Pass site where we ordered our train tickets, we ordered a pocket Wi-Fi adapter. So we picked it up when we got there at the airport, and we took it with us everywhere, and we're able to like use our Wi-Fi on our phones, and it didn't cost any data. We didn't have to get like an international plan to text or call because we could just iMessage or use Messenger
FaceTime.
Or email and FaceTime our families to talk to them. So we paid, I think, $70 for a Wi-Fi adapter and used it the whole time we were there.
That Wi-Fi was stronger than
And
most of our hotel Wi-Fis.
Yeah, it was so good.
It's also kind of important because if you ever want to get like directions using like maps, or like using like which train station do we need to go to get to this place, you have to have Wi-Fi, or you're going to be paying through your wireless provider.
And it's going to be a lot more expensive than to just have a Wi-Fi. So like when we were in Shibuya and we wanted to find different places to eat, we could go on Yelp, we could go on our maps and like input where something was and find it super easily.
Maddy could work on her like she had work she had to do while she was there, and she could use her laptop in the hotel. And it never died. We just charged it at night.
Charge it every night, and then when you're done with it, you just drop it in any red mailbox anywhere in the country. There's one right in the airport, and we just dropped it in. Super easy.
So one of our other favorite places in Tokyo is Harajuku. Harajuku is really similar to Shibuya. You've probably heard the name because it's known for crazy people, like pink hair, those sort of things. My family's not huge on it. I think it's kind of fun. Right outside the Harajuku station is the Meiji Shrine, very famous shrine. There's jokes about it in The Simpsons. It's very well known. And then in Harajuku there's just so many places to see, and there's bright lights, kind of like Shibuya, not quite to the same extent.
Not quite as big, but like different things to see. There's lots of like cosplay to see and like stereotypical Japan, like lots of crazy music and bright lights and pink places.
You can buy a crepe like on every corner. So that's a really fun place to go. While we were there, we only spent probably an hour there, not including Meiji Shrine, and that was more than enough.
Yeah.
So take that into consideration, and that's probably a lot of other places in Tokyo. We also went to Ginza, and we only spent like a couple hours there. So you don't have to spend a ton of time there. Obviously, the more time you spend, the more you see, but just keep that in mind.
And along with that, one of the things that I found out really quickly, and that Randy warned me about before, is that a lot of times they don't give you, at a restaurant, they don't give you water. They give you what's called mugicha, and it's like a barley tea. So it's like an herbal tea, no caffeine, so it's fine for us to drink. But it has like a very acquired taste. So we went and got some from like the local Asian market before we went, so I could try it, so I could know what it tasted like, so I could start to get used to it. Because about 50% of the time at any restaurant we were at, like half the time they would give us water, half the time they would give us mugi, and it would be like really weird to ask for water. So I just didn't. If they just gave us mugi, it's cold and it's got ice and it's still fine. It's good. So that's something though that I'm glad that we tried beforehand, so I knew what I was getting into. And along with that, I would say like the food in Japan is so good, and you don't have to go to really expensive places to get good food. Like the cheap fast food sushi place is so good. So it's easy to walk in anywhere you go, and we didn't have a bad meal while we were there. All the food was so good. And even like we'd go into 7-Eleven or like a convenience store, and all of the food there is so good. It's not like here where it's like weird frozen burritos and stuff. It's like really good food just at the convenience store, so we could eat really inexpensively the whole time we were there, and then splurge on like really nice dinners when we wanted to.
Also on our top 5-10 things to do in Japan is the Tokyo Disney Resort. And with that, you could make a trip out of just the Tokyo Disney Resort. It's completely different than the rest of Japan. For those really hardcore Disneyland goers, it's a must-see. My father is probably the most intense Disneyland fan I've ever met, and like I have a ton of Instagram and Facebook friends that will like get all intense about it, but like he does his research, he's really intense about it, and he says that Disneyland in Tokyo is the best of the Disney parks, mostly because it's clean.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's really clean, and along with that, something to consider when you go, if you do go to Tokyo Disneyland or Tokyo Disney Sea, they have great rides. They're Winnie the Pooh and they're Indiana Jones, just dominate ours. Rides that you'll never ride in the US, they have them. But if you're gonna go, I would really recommend adding to your budget food in Disneyland. The food there is far better than anything you're gonna eat here in the US. And the price difference, they have a Blue Bayou just like in California, but it's about $20 cheaper, and I would argue that it's just as good, if not better.
Like I had a seafood gumbo, and it's so fresh, and it's fresh in California too, I'm sure, but it was unreal. It was so good.
So I mean, it definitely is it was the most expensive meals that we had, I think.
But it was well worth it, and the tickets are about half the price as California or Florida, so you save a lot of money to even get there. But we made up for that with like all the treats that they have there are so good, and it was just a really cool glimpse of the culture that you wouldn't see just on the streets of Tokyo. Randy kind of prepped me, and I was really glad that he did, but PDA isn't like a thing in Japan. They're not very affectionate, and not
it just sounds funny.
They're not like very big on displaying their affection. So I mean, we would hold hands, and it wasn't a big deal. But I will say that like I've seen people be like, people were all weirded out that we were kissing in the train and stuff, and I mean, it's a cultural thing that they don't really do that, and I didn't want to make anybody uncomfortable while I was there, so I tried not to be overly over the top PDA, because I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable, and that's like a cultural thing. And so I think it's important to like know those cultural things going in, so you don't have to make anybody uncomfortable without really knowing what you're doing.
Okay, the last place that we really wanted to talk about is really close to Tokyo. It's called Kamakura. The reason we went there is because my grandma actually took us there, and that's part of the reason why it was so much fun for us. But there is a lot of things you can see while you're there. There's this giant. There's a lot of Buddhas, like Buddha statues in Japan. One of the most famous ones, the Daibutsu, is in Kamakura. That's really fun to see. There's a lot of great shopping, good shrines, and it's a really good time. You can even go to the beach if that's something you're into. When we went there with my grandma, I mean, she's getting close to 80, so she's a lot older. She's still in great health, but she did get pretty tired at one point and wanted to go have a cup of coffee. So when she wanted to do that, she decided to go buy a ride on what's called a jinriksha. It's like a cart that these people like run and push you in. And that was surprisingly one of our favorite things we did while we were there.
It was so cool.
I think it was about like I mean, it's kind of pricey, not a must do, but
if you're gonna go to Kamakura and you have some time and you have a little bit of extra money, it's worth it because you see lots of the city really quickly and you cover lots of ground. And it was just fun to talk to our English tour guide who didn't speak great English, and it was just really fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was something I would recommend. But I mean, there's a lot to do in Kamakura that you can go see and have a good time.
Some other last tips are that hotels in Japan are really small, so just be prepared. Like I scoured TripAdvisor to find hotels and looked at the ratings and reviews there, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's so small." Yeah, the hotels are small. That's just how it is. All the hotel rooms we had were really, really tiny. But we were out most of the day doing stuff, so it wasn't a big deal.
When they're clean.
And they're so
fine.
clean. They're fine. Even we got hotels that were like 3-star rated on TripAdvisor because people complained they were too small, and they were fantastic. So clean, so good.
The only thing I would recommend with the small hotel rooms is it was kind of difficult to find places to charge all of our things. So one trick that Maddy and I figured out was we would plug in both of our computers into the walls and then use the USBs to plug into our phones and our camera stuff.
Yeah.
So you have to be a little bit creative, but we never
had a problem.
We never really had a problem.
Yeah.
So and you don't spend time in your hotel. Like it's important that you have a clean hotel so you can sleep and stuff. But I mean, small hotel wasn't a big deal for us. We didn't spend any time there. We were out and about, so.
Yeah. Another thing that I love to do, and especially going to a place like Japan, is they have in every train station right out of every train station there's malls all over, and we knew we'd want to get some like souvenirs and shirts and clothes. So we both packed like 1 or 2 less outfits than we thought we'd want, and then by the time we were done, we bought a few like shirts and some things that we saw there that we really wanted. So we used those and supplemented our wardrobe. Instead of bringing a bunch of stuff, we knew we'd be buying some things, so we brought those home instead.
And with that, if you do go to some clothing outlet or retail store, a lot of the dressing rooms you do need to take your shoes off in order to get into the dressing room. So just consider that. We love shopping, and I mean the fashion in Japan is
so
awesome.
Cool.
So I would recommend it. We had a lot of fun with it.
And that's another huge thing. If you go to any home and even some restaurants or like dressing rooms, you take your shoes off. It's extremely rude if you don't. So we made sure we brought shoes that were easy to slip off, like had matching socks, like everything like that. Made sure that if we needed to take our shoes off, that we were respectful. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have, is that the culture is so respectful and polite. Everyone is so nice, tries so hard to help you. So just being respectful of the culture is really important. I think there's a couple apps that we'll put in the description box, like the Google Translate app that was helpful, and the Japan Rail Pass app that helped us get around the trains and everything. And I might link like some of the hotels that we stayed in, or where I found hotels and stuff like that. But hopefully this video answered some questions. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments below and we'll answer them. We had so much fun in Japan, and if you go, you'll have so much fun. If you have any other tips or tricks about traveling to Japan, go ahead and put them in the comments too. And we hope you enjoyed this.